get all the evidence that the other side has against them so that they can prepare for that and the case can go smoother, in court. But they have to ask the right questions. There's no obligation for the other side to turn over everything they know. You've got to sort of ask these questions, right? And so we treat these petitions for redress of grievances as depositions. It's though we're in a confrontation with the government and we want them, we know what the facts are, so every one of these questions that you're going to see in a minute, and all of these petitions, these are actually statements of fact. We know they're fact, and we want the government to admit or deny them, all right? So we get through the whereases, and then we get to questions. You admit that our government, the United States of America, does not own any of the stock in the Federal Reserve banks. Yes or no? That's a question that we know what the answer is. They don't. Okay. Do you admit that the Federal Reserve System consists of a board of governors in Washington, D.C., plus a group of privately held or privately and publicly administered corporations, including 12 main banks and 21? So you go through this and you get a pretty good idea of what the Federal Reserve really is all about and what the constitutional problems are, with a series of facts, all preceded with the word admit or deny. And they won't answer the questions, and you know why. But that's what all of these, we're simply looking for answers to questions. That's what these petitions are about.
So Bob, how do you get them to the table?
Well, that's coming right now.
Okay.
There are 3 cases where I've been personally involved in pushing and in raising this right to petition issue and establishing the attitude of the judiciary. I won't go through all of these, but in the first one, it's in my property tax case that in 2006 the Supreme Court said they weren't going to hear. Here I had my county where I live admit that they violated the home rule provision of my state constitution in taking, in doing some project that resulted in a 30% increase, or that has resulted in 30% of my property tax. 30% of my property tax is due to this one project, which was unconstitutionally instituted, and they've admitted it, all right? And anyway, I went to court, and didn't matter. You can read about it, but I won't bore you here. But and then there is the We the People of VS, and then there are these 6,700 cases. Remember, I said the government sued us the week after we did the Beef and Vendetta. That's known as a 6,700 case. You can go to the website. You see, but we're pushing the issue of the right to petition in these 3 cases, and we're establishing a record. We're showing that the judiciary is not doing its job. That for some reason it's just not doing its job. So what's the plan? What are we going to do about this? What we're saying is these petitions for redress of grievances, all of them, should all be signed, not by the few thousand people that signed it initially, but by 500,000, 600,000, 700,000, 1 million people should sign these, should read them, agree with them, and sign them, electronically, online. So now we have 7 or 8 DVDs with 1 million signatures on them. And on June 8th or June 21st or whenever this march, if it does occur, and if it doesn't, then we just do it anyway. I would say if there's going to be a march on Washington that Ron Paul is talking about and others, that it should be done not as just another march. I mean, there are marches 1 a week down there, and it ought to have some teeth. It ought to move freedom along in some way, other than just going down and everybody spending all their money and feeling good and meeting, with a large group of people to show just how many of us there really are and so forth. But why not, on that day, have a constituent of every congressman, maybe 2 or 3, in groups of 2 or 3, while everybody else, hopefully it's a huge number of people, actually serves these on every member of Congress with a demand that they respond. And the transmittal letter isn't written yet, but it might say something like, look, we want a group of experts on every one of these subjects to agree to meet in a recorded public forum and address these issues and answer these questions on a certain date. And then if they don't, then what must a free people do? That's the question for you. That's a question that has to ferment amongst the people over the next few months. What will we, a free people, do if we have this? Ron Paul has said it's unconstitutional to go into Iraq without a declaration of war. He has said the Federal Reserve is unconstitutional. He has said the USA Patriot Act has to go because it violates our privacy. He has said the IRS and the income tax have to go. So we have people who know it's unconstitutional. So the question is, I know what I'm going to do if they don't respond. So the question is, what must the free people do if the government does not respond to our petitions? Do we just sit back? Look, God love Ron.
Withhold our money, no.
God love Ron. God love Ron, but he has to measure what he does very carefully. And Ron did a great job of bringing a lot of people to these issues. But he failed to really connect the dots. He talks in his speeches about we have to end the income tax and the Federal Reserve, and people cheer. We have to get the troops home. People cheer. It's unconstitutional war, and people cheer. Federal Reserve is unconstitutional. People cheer. But he doesn't bring it back. These are not public policy issues. They're not public policy issues. They're constitutional violations. That's Ron Paul saying, God love him, but Ron Paul saying, elect me and elect other people. We have to restore the Constitution. The answer is not in one more than half the number of people voting in our precincts and in the halls of Congress. That's not the answer. Let me explain. Just think about the math. Just think about the math. One more than half the number of people voting in our precincts. Do you know how many people that is? And that's saying we need the majority. We'll be saved by the majority. Nonsense. It'll never, never, ever happen.
That's my rule.
The majority likes. There's two schools of people. There are those who believe the government should take care of it. And there are those who said, no, it's individualism and self-reliance, and so forth. Two schools of people. Socialism, is the first group.
The government
And so, we could change. We could allow the change, this transition, with or without amending the Constitution.
What about Freedom Force? Edward Griffin's thing.
Great. Yeah, but he too says we got to make changes one by one from within. But I love Ed. I know him very well. Have known him for a long time. But again, we have a tendency in this country to couch everything in political terms. It's wrong. The Constitution is all that stands between us and total tyranny and despotism, and it can't defend itself. That is our job. These issues are constitutional violations. They're not discretionary public policy issues. They're public policy that was set in concrete in the Constitution in 1787 and 1791.
So how do we get
They're
to the
set
table?
in concrete. They're not discretionary. You don't elect somebody because he's going to defend them or whatever. Just think of the math. One more than half the number of people voting in Congress, and one more than half the number of people voting to get those people in Congress? I mean, geez, I'll never see it. My children will never see it. My grandchildren will never see it. We can't live that long. It'll never happen. It just will not happen.
So
The thing that
a solution or a question?
our rights, the one thing that separates us from all the people throughout the globe, throughout history, is the principles, the essential principles underlying our system of governance. These rights are individual rights. They are unalienable rights. They are endowed by the Creator. What else is there? So the solution, I think, is what must the free people do? What will we do if they don't respond to these petitions for redress of grievances? We ask them questions. It doesn't matter what the Supreme Court or the Court of Appeals said. They didn't give us these rights. They can't take them away. It's up to us. It's our fault. What's happening to us is our fault. The people have allowed this to happen. Yes?
Could you go back to those PDF files and just open any one of them? Now, have those all been put in as a package so far?
All right, those
those
four
Are
have all been served. These four are on our website, and people are signing up on them, and they have not all been served. But these 8 and any more that we might want to develop should be prepared and signed by a whole lot of people and served one, you say as a package, one petition on a DVD with all the signatures. So there's 8 DVDs to be served on every member.
Could you open any one of those
Sure.
and then go down to the question area?
Yep.
Could any one of those questions, instead of being put in a question format, can be put into a statement format instead?
That is a statement.
Well, understand this, very important.
And then after you have the statement, say, is that correct?
No, here is the, understand this about, let me repeat. Understand this about each of these questions. The statement that comes after admit or deny is a statement of fact. We know the answer. It's a statement of fact. It is already fact. And we're just asking them to admit or deny it. If they deny it, we can prove them wrong. But
Instead of using that format, are you familiar with the Flynn's format?
Maggie,
Putting a presumptive paragraph at the start and at the tail end, and then making a statement and saying, is that correct? By failing to respond, they affirm it all. Are you aware of that?
I am, and
You're talking about an estoppel, using the stop law.
Yes.
Say, respond to this,
By
otherwise you're
acquiescence.
stopped.
Silence is admissible.
well,
You ask
There
for
are-
a solution, I'm suggesting a solution.
Well-
that may be workable.
yeah, I will look further into that. When the government has a duty to respond and they don't, it is admission. Silence is then admission.
Yes.
And so they are admitting every one of these if they don't respond. Under the, and the Supreme Court has said many times, if they have a duty to respond and they don't, then it is admission.
Then it's tyranny also.
Yes.
They ought to be spelled out.
Okay. Yes, ma'am in the back?
What state has a governor that will make a symbolic gesture to the federal legislature and ask permission to secede? Is what I want to know.
Not Florida's.
No, I want to know.
I don't know. I have no idea. Yes.
Wisconsin.
Rhode Island, maybe.
I don't
Wisconsin
know.
already did something like that with regards to the Second Amendment thing that the Supreme Court's supposed to be hearing. In other words.
Well, let's stay focused here though.
Our question's at the end, right?
Let's stay focused on this plan. And
Could I bring one fly in the ointment in the plan here?
yes,
Education. Most of the U.S. population gets its education from the boob tube. When the Constitution was written, the First Amendment spoke of freedom of the press. At that time, we spoke of newspapers, and they were fairly objective. Today, they have agendas. The media has agendas, mainly due to huge corporate ownership, and those corporations are making billions in
So-
war effort.
yeah.
So we're a little hamstrung
Well-
on getting this word to the people through their main media sources.
I understand, and I recognize that early on. Years ago, I came under a lot of criticism from the patriot community who was doing their newsletters and their magazines, and we did at least 5 full-page ads in USA Today, a full-page ad in New York Times, Washington Times many times. We had these National Press Club meetings at great expense. A couple of them were covered by the C-SPAN. So we came under criticism. Why don't you take that money, Bob, and give it to us? But my answer was, look, I love you guys, but you're talking to the choir. We have to reach the uninitiated. We have to reach the general public. And so when I run an ad in the USA Today, it's Friday night. That is out there for 3 days. Almost every hotel room, you get up in the morning and there it is. You go through the airports, there it is. It's all over the place for the entire weekend. So it's better for us to do that. And for instance, I think we need a full-page ad now that talks about this decision by the Supreme Court. We need to get that word out. We need to get those issues out there, get people talking about it. But again, we can't depend upon anybody but ourselves. We can't rely on the... I get around the country a lot. I know that there's a lot of people around that know the truth. A lot of them don't begin to wake up until they're 40, although Ron Paul seems to have changed that. He's got a lot of young people involved. But the problem is these people who know the truth are more or less isolated one from another. They are, it's hard to talk to your spouse, it's hard to talk to your coworker about these issues. It's difficult. What we need to do is organize, and so that we can put a collective foot down. Mahatma Gandhi, I quote a lot, he was successful in throwing off England. He had a formula that Martin Luther King picked up on. And Martin Luther King, he wrote a piece I read in 1953 in which he said, this is Gandhi's formula and I'm going to follow it. And Martin Luther followed it and was successful. Gandhi said, when you're up against unjust and uncivil government and laws and you're entitled to reform or change, you will get it only if you follow a three-part formula. He said, you have to be proactive. We are. You have to be nonviolent. We are. But you need a mass movement. You need critical mass. What is critical mass? I have no idea. But it's at least 1/10 of 1% of the population. I mean, 1/10 of 1% of the population may be enough. That's 300,000 people. You get 300,000 people acting collectively, doing something like this and going to Washington and saying, respond to this or whatever. I mean, that's going to make the difference. It's people power. People power has always worked. But to get that number of people working together, that takes organization. And that's what the We the People Congress is all about, is to organize people county by county, state by state. And if you're familiar with our website, you'll see what the structure is there for you all to use to make this happen. Stay focused on a few issues and to and bring these people. The We the People Congress has two tasks: to distribute information that the people just simply aren't getting from anywhere else, and also to scrutinize governmental behavior at every level and compare that behavior with the requirements of our state and federal constitutions, and wherever we see an impropriety, confront them. But this is my rocket ship analogy. It isn't going to happen if we continue going the way we're going. To get a rocket ship off the ground and through the atmosphere with all that resistance out into space, it takes thrust. Thrust comes from channeling energy. The energy is challenged. That's the compartment to the left there. The yellow part is where all the liquid fuel is. There's an orifice, and then as you would light it, you create all that energy, and it's passed through an orifice, and that gives it the velocity, and together that's thrust. The problem with the Patriot community is this. In that chamber up there, where all that yellow is, there are holes in the wall. And we've got all the energy going off in all different directions. It's not channeled. It isn't down. It's out all over the place. And so we can't lift the frickin' rocket off the ground. We don't have the thrust. Because everybody's doing their thing. Everybody's got a better idea or whatever. We're never going to get anywhere if we don't come together and unite. You've got to. Somebody has to decide, all right, what is the plan? And what are we going to do to get there? Okay? So that's my little rocket ship analogy. organization is the key. A few years ago, we instituted the We the People Congress. And we said, county by county, precinct by precinct, state by state, we need to organize. We need county, state coordinators, precinct coordinators. And their job is only twofold. The only two things this organization, it's like a cause. It's the cause of freedom. It's like the Sierra Club. They got a real cause. You know, the environment, the Wildlife Federation, that's a cause. People, you know, write checks, and when they die, they leave some of their estate to this cause. We need freedom as a cause, on the same plane as some of these other causes. And that takes, you know, organization. And so, at every level, the coordinators, this organization is only doing two things. Only two things. It's distributing information that people just aren't getting anywhere else on the history, the meaning, the effect, and the significance of every provision of our state and federal constitutions and our Declaration of Independence. They're just not getting it anywhere from anywhere else today. Civic education is in school. It just isn't there anymore, right? Kids aren't being taught that they have the ultimate power, that they have a developing responsibility as they go through their lives to know what their rights are, to watch government and to confront them when they're doing something wrong. No, they're taught the state is sovereign. If you got a problem, look to the government. That's wrong. And you think we're gaining strength in numbers? The government's turning out millions of kids every year.
That's what he's trying to do with this.
You know,
national
with this warped, you know, idea, okay? So we need to put information out there that people just aren't getting. And there's a lot of it, and if it's well structured, it's getting put out. And then the other job is to scrutinize governmental behavior and confront them. Now, we've got enough on our plate right now with these issues that I've just raised. Everybody in the country should be focusing on these issues. These are the issues at the moment. Yeah, there's lots of other opportunity. The local and state government is real fertile ground. You know, there are lots of violations. Geez, we could spend our time at those, and everybody could be going off in all these different directions. But for the time being, I think it's these issues. Look at the record we've established. They don't want to touch these issues. Supreme Court abdicates its duty. It abandons its duty. I mean, that's a record. We're justified in doing... Wait. So, why this picture? This is Jefferson's home. You know how you pass through your state capitals and you see a building with a dome on it? The architecture varies from state to state. But you instinctively know when you see that building, that's where the government is doing it for or to the people, right? You know that. We need another building like this in every state. So that eventually, and this is my choice of the architecture, so that eventually, when people see this building, they know that's where the government, where the people are watching the government. In that building, remember, underneath them, you got state coordinators, county coordinators, district coordinators, and they're feeding up these ideas and challenging the government, you know, holding them accountable to the Constitution and so forth. So in there, you've got attorneys and paralegal and support personnel and so forth. And then you got 50 of these around the country. It's not hard to raise the money to build these. Get with it. Build one of these in your state to get this organization going, okay? And so that's the organization. And if when you get to this PowerPoint, you can you'll see that, well, there's a link to the We the People Congress homepage, but then there's a link to this map. And this is what we set up for people to use. But it requires, so you could go to any state here, click on it, and you'll get the contact information for your state coordinator. So here in Florida, the state coordinator is, what am I doing here? So this, we have state websites or state pages within our website. So there's 50 of these, one for every state. And people can sign up and become the state coordinator. And then they control what goes on this page. What's going on in your state and what people are doing about it, okay? And how they're working, for the time being, at least how they're working with the rest of us on some of these national issues. But there's also a drop-down list on every one of these. And you can drop down to all the counties in your state. So there's Hillsborough County. And you can click on there, and the name of the county coordinator, you know, comes up, okay? And there's no county coordinator. All right, so, I mean, the point is, it's there. We made a mistake early on putting this up there and just allowing software-wise, whoever stepped in, that was the state coordinator. And anybody else that wanted to become a state or county coordinator, if the position was full, they were blocked. And all they could do was end up as becoming a volunteer to help that person. And a lot of people stepped in that just didn't have the leadership capability, that just weren't suited for the job. They didn't have any organizational skills. They weren't self-starters. They were waiting to be told what to do. And whereas somewhere else on the site, we've got a coordinator resource center explaining what we want everybody to do, initially. But it's never been done before. Organizing the people like this, to confront, to help people to become better informed about what their rights are, better informed about what government is doing, and better informed about how to intelligently, professionally, standing on the Constitution, confront them when they're doing something wrong. Never been done before. It's an ambitious task. But it's there. It's all set up, and it's not perfect. It needs some improvement. We can certainly talk about that. And then get one of these in place. I'm committed to making this happen. The rest of my life, it's institutionalizing vigilance. It's making vigilance as much a part of our lives as something else we do regularly, like go to church or something. That's making citizen vigilance, institutionalizing it. That's the way it was supposed to be, but it's not in the natural order of things. Believe me, you know. What's in the natural order of things are for you to take care of your careers and your family, not to worry about what government is doing. But you better get with it, because they're like salami. They're slicing away at our freedoms. Yes, ma'am.
One of the things that we can do is take absolute personal responsibility for our government. If it's we, the people, then that means us. Us going into city council, us going into the state legislature, us going to Congress, us becoming the people that make those kinds of decisions. So I encourage to run for office. Run for office, and rather than going against them, be one that you'll spread the message. You'll be a part of it. You'll be out there with a platform and telling the truth. So I encourage people to have that option as well.
Well, certainly we need good people in office. Certainly I vote, and certainly I'm concerned about who's going to fill a different position. But I am not going to depend upon one more than half the number of people voting in my precincts or in any precincts or in the halls of Congress for my freedom. I'm not going to do it, okay? I'm going to understand what my rights are, and I'm going to confront government when I see them stepping out of line, as they have done with war and taxes and the rest of it. Yes, sir?
Is there a Leon County coordinator? Tallahassee?
Again, I haven't monitored this. We have a regional coordinator who is supposed to put the state coordinators in place. The state coordinators are supposed to put the county coordinators in place and is responsible for those, and that's the way it's designed to work. So I don't know. Let's take a look.
Just to let you all know, I am the Hillsborough County Coordinator. I'm not sure why I'm not on there, but the name is Randy Hunt. I'll charge you if you need one.
Randy.
Thanks, Randy.
You gotta get to the site and sign up. Leon County. Oops. What did I do here? Golly. Oh, there we go. Okay. All right. Well, let's see. Let's see who it is. One of the problems we've had, and remember, we did this. We put it out there. We got regional coordinators to make it all happen, and a lot of people sign up, and they were not right for the job. They move. They change their email address or whatever. But we're not keeping, up on all of that. But that's something we need to take. It's all here. It's all the structure's here to make it all happen. Now let's see who this is. And maybe there's somebody in the room, Alex or somebody could tell us.